We are jumping back into Rise and Fall. This is our study through 1 Samuel in the Old Testament. And so those of you that have been here for a while, you know that I have a little bit of a shoe addiction or problem or hobby, whatever it is that you want to call it. All of you call it different things when you refer to it. But I want to show you my favorite shoe in my collection, and since I'm very absent-minded and I get to church very early on Sundays, I forgot it at home, so the picture will have to do. But this is a picture of my favorite shoe in my collection. My absolute favorite shoe. Now, when I showed this to my wife, who is, by the way, very supportive of my shoe problem most of the time, when I showed this to her, she says, "This is the ugliest shoe I've ever seen in my life." How many of you, let's just see by a show of hands, agree with my wife that okay. All right, now listen, here's what I will tell you. I don't disagree with you at all. Those shoes, keep that shoe up there. They don't want to look at me. Look at the shoe. Look at the shoe. That is an ugly shoe. Now the reason why I broke down and finally bought it though, was because everyone kept telling me how comfortable it was. They said, "Oh, it's great on your feet. You can wear them all day. Your feet feel just fine." I'm like, "Oh, great," because back in January, I did a fundraiser for my baseball team where I was making pepperoni rolls for about 8 to 10 hours straight, standing, and I ended up with a heel spur at the end of that day. And I struggled with it for months, and then I bought these shoes. I began to wear these shoes most of the time, and my foot stopped hurting. Like yesterday, I was at our Little League concession stand for like 2 hours, then went to our baseball tournament for like 7 hours, then went back to the concession stand at Little League to work like another 3 hours. Wearing those shoes, my feet did not hurt all day long. Any other pair of shoes, I would have been unable to, I would have to sit down and preach to you today. So my whole point is, even though they are ugly as sin, they serve a function. Right? And I'm kind of at that point in my life where I like nice things. I like things that are aesthetically pleasing and nice to look at. But I'm sort of at the point where I will take function over form 9 times out of 10. I will take what works the best over something that is pretty any day right now. Right? Because y'all know how it is. When you start, and I know I'm a lot younger than some of you and a lot older than some of you. We all hit that age, right? Where you start making choices the day before about what you got to do the next day. Right? Like if I want to be able to walk tomorrow, I'm going to have to wear these today. Or like, no, I can't choose to just fall asleep on the couch anymore because that's 3 days at the chiropractor if I do that. Right? Like you start making choices like that because you go, there's now consequences because my body's no longer 16 years old when you used to just be able to sleep on your friend's floor with no consequences. It's not that anymore. So like I'm at a point in my life where I'm like, I'll wear the ugly shoe that's good for my foot if it makes my feet feel good. Now, here's the beautiful thing is there's also really good looking shoes that are good for your feet too, but you get the example. A lot of people want function now over form. They will take what works more so than what just looks good. And let me tell you, I am running into people and reading about and hearing about that this is actually how our current society and generation actually chooses their worldview and the faith that they follow. What happened, there's been a massive shift over the last 200 years. When we came out of the Enlightenment period, what everybody would ask when it came to faith and spirituality and religion in the modern age, they would ask this question: is it true? Is it true? We want to know, is it true? And then what happened is we come through the Enlightenment and the science and technological innovations and things over the last 200 years. Darwin writes on the origin of species. People like Friedrich Nietzsche come out. They start writing about how God is dead and all of this different things. And we realize that the culture starts shifting away from wondering whether something is true or not, and now we end up in a postmodern society where the philosophy of postmodernism is not ever asking the question if something is true or not, because postmodernism says nothing can actually be known. That's why we have moved, especially here in the West, to relative morals, where everything is relative. You do what's good for you, I'll do what's good for me. Or subjective morals, where, that's kind of your opinion. That's not how I feel about it. So everything is shifted, and the reason is postmodernism goes, nothing can be known. We doubt history now. We doubt absolutely everything. That's postmodernism. And the question that postmodern people ask is not if a worldview or if a religion or a faith or any other thing, they don't ask, is it true? Here's the question that they ask. Does it work? Does it work? Because postmodern people go, what happened is we had a really bad reaction in modernism to the answer, is it true? Because everybody, especially after Darwin's writing in different people, they just go, no, it's not true, and we'll criticize anyone that thinks that it is true. We will put you under the microscope based on modern science and technology and all of this stuff and prove that your little God-sized vision for the world is just foolish. But now in postmodernism, since nothing can be known, we don't necessarily ridicule people of faith so much more. They just say, no, that's fine for you if it works for you. It's okay to have faith now, as long as it works for you, because the number one highest value in our world now is to be true to yourself. So your faith is now okay as long as it's functional for you, as long as it meets your needs, as long as it scratches that itch that you have, it's all fine. The fastest growing, listen, this is how we know this to be true, because the studies are actually showing this. Still, over the last decade, or maybe even longer at this point, the fastest growing demographic in the West, especially here in America, is a group called the nuns. These are people that are not religiously affiliated with anything. This is a drastic shift. You understand, within 50 to 100 years ago, to not be religiously affiliated would have had you sitting on the outside of every social circle anywhere. And now the fastest growing group in America, it was at 21% back in 2017 to 2020. It was at 21% of Americans, which that represents, close to 60 million Americans that are not religiously affiliated. In just the past 3 years, that number is now at 28%. We're now almost getting to where 1/3, we're getting close to 100 million people in the United States that say, I'm not religiously affiliated. I don't want anything to do with your faith, your church, or anything like that. Now that's fascinating, because here's the deal. The same study shows that of that almost 100 million people in America that says they're not religiously affiliated, want nothing to do with the church, want nothing to do with faith, 50% of them say that spirituality is still a high priority for them. That's remarkable. I'm not religiously affiliated. I don't want anything to do with the church. However, or you run into these people. I'm spiritual but not religious. Spiritual but not religious. Now, most people would look at those sorts of stats with a sad and heavy heart, especially Christians. We have a tendency to look at what's happening in the world and go, oh my gosh, I can't believe how bad things have gotten ever since we're not in power anymore. I see that as an unbelievable opportunity. That the fastest growing group in the United States still says, there's still supernatural things happening. There is still something that can be tapped into. They just can't quite put their finger on what it is. So they're asking the wrong question. They're asking, what is it that works for me? And a lot of them go, here's what works for me. Not church, not Jesus, but just a general spirituality where I get in touch with nature. Or I get in touch with my ancestors. Or I get in, whatever it is. Oh, it's meditation, or it's crystals, or it's this or that. It's whatever. They're willing to try absolutely anything to see if it works. And when they find something that works, they go, that's my worldview. And everyone now just goes, that's great. If it works for you, you just keep doing that. That's the world that we live in. For instance, I was doing a funeral one day, and we were hanging out at the cemetery waiting on the service to start. I started talking to this incredibly interesting guy. He's like fascinated with the fact that I'm a pastor, and he wants to know more about my life and the Christian faith and all this stuff we're talking. And he goes, well, see, for me, he says, I'm a Buddhist. I said, oh, that's interesting. Tell me more about that. He goes, well, essentially, I went through a really difficult time in my life, and I started searching for something to help me. And when I came across the Buddhist literature and the books and the people, the videos, the people that were espousing this worldview, they just told me exactly what I needed to hear. And so I went with that. It doesn't matter if it's true. It just matters if it works. This is how people are making decisions about faith and worldview. Doesn't matter if it's true. I just want to know, does it work? Now, here's the interesting thing about this, is that this is actually not so much of a modern problem as we think. Because this is how people for literally millennia have chosen their faith. They have chosen to operate in this way. Think about the story. If you weren't here last week, I hope that you're catching up each week because this series is just going to keep building on each other. Think about the story last week. Israel, God's chosen people, are defeated in battle. And their idea is not to repent and turn to God, but rather to go get the Ark of the Covenant, their religious symbol, and bring it into battle to see if then God would change his mind and help them win. Oh, don't repent. Don't actually turn to God. Take the shortcut. See if that will work. See if that sort of functional, what I'm going to call today, functional faith, they try to take it and they go, here, let's see if this works, because I don't know if it will or not. Like Christians are honestly, we're not too far from ancient Israel in this, because it's not just people that end up in Buddhism or atheism or New Age or the nuns. It's not just them that are choosing faith based on function. It's a lot of Christians as well. In fact, it's a lot more than what would ever be comfortable with raising their hand to say, yeah, that's me. Because my guess is most people turn to Christianity because they were looking for hope. They were looking for something to meet their needs. They were looking for joy, peace. They were looking for some way to fix their marriage, some way to raise their kids in a moral way. They were looking for it to, you see how functional this is? How I'm looking for it to meet a need. They don't think a whole lot about whether it's true. They just want to know if it works. And the problem with that is, now don't get fussy. I'll fully flesh this whole thing out for you. But what happens if you came to Christianity looking for those things? What happens when that's not what you find? What if sometimes rather than hope in the Christian faith, you get suffering? See, if you came because of a functional faith, trying to find what works, you'll decide that the Christian faith isn't working and you'll leave it. If you came looking for healing and he doesn't heal, you'll leave if you have a functional faith. Oh, that's not meeting my need. If you came looking for certain results and it doesn't go your way, in functional faith, you'll just take off because functional faith doesn't help you in your times of trouble. In fact, functional faith will make your times of trouble even more difficult. Because you'll start wondering, why is it that God will not answer my prayer? Why will God not do what I want him to do? This is what's going on with Israel last week. Why is it that we lost and then we brought God into this and we still lost? Well, because you thought God could be manipulated. You thought God could be forced into doing things your way. Listen, if you have a functional faith, if you came at it the same way that I choose shoes, you're like, I just want to know what works, what's going to hurt me the least. If that's how you got in, when life ends up difficult, you don't actually have a faith that will hold you. Functional faith only actually works when you get what you want out of it. So your faith is only as good as your life is if you have functional faith. If you're looking for results, then when the results don't come, you'll abandon ship and go somewhere else. Functional faith ends up, what we do in functional faith, we end up worshiping the byproduct of faith. We're in it. Okay, God, what can you offer me? What can you do for me? What is it that you can, how can you bless my life? How can you fix my life? We end up worshiping the byproduct of faith rather than actually worshiping the God behind it all. We end up wanting to worship the results rather than something that is real. This is what happens in functional faith. Now, we saw last week, it did not work. Functional faith did not work for Israel, did it? It absolutely did not. Because they're going, wait, we tried to manipulate God, it didn't work, we still lost. Now what? Well, you remember at the end of last week's story, the Israelites are absolutely decimated, even though they brought the Ark of the Covenant, their most sacred treasure, the place where the presence of God was said to have dwelt. But on that day, God didn't show up. Again, this is why functional faith doesn't work, because what are you going to do on those days where he doesn't show up like you thought he was going to? What if he shows up in a different way? What if he shows up in a quiet, behind-the-scenes type way? And you go, well, that didn't go how I thought it was going to go. See, if you got a functional faith, you don't have anything to hold you. Now, here's what happened. They were decimated. And the Philistines, a pagan nation, but also, this is what's amazing, also operating in functional faith. Asking the question, what works? They take the Ark of the Covenant from Israel, and you know what they do? 1 Samuel chapter 5, verse 1 says this, and the Philistines captured the Ark of God. They took it from the battleground at Ebenezer to the town of Ashdod, and they carried the Ark of God into the temple of Dagon, that's their God, and placed it beside the idol of Dagon. Now, why would they do this? They're not God's chosen people. The Ark of the Covenant shouldn't mean anything to them whatsoever. Why would a pagan nation pick up Israel's most sacred object, the place where the God of Israel was said to have dwelt and ruled from, and take it to their temple beside their God Dagon? Why in the world would they do that? Here's why. Hey, because last week, remember when the ark came into Israel's camp, the Philistines, they all go, whoa, whoa, whoa. We've heard about this God before. We've heard about what he did to Egypt. We heard about the plagues. We heard how he set them free. We're doomed. We're doomed. They knew what that God was capable of, so they go, you know what? Here's what we'll do. We'll take this God, and we will add him to our other God. We'll just add him on the side. Because they're looking for that God. Okay, he didn't show up for Israel, but maybe he'll show up for us. Maybe there's a way that we can pull all the levers and hit the right buttons to force that God to show up for us. So they put him in their temple right next to Dagon. And this is all, let's just be honest. This is actually how a lot of people treat Jesus. They start coming to church, they adopt what they believe to be the Christian faith, but all they're really ever doing is just setting Jesus right next to the rest of their idols. And if you're going, well, how do I know if that's me? How do I know if I just set Jesus right next to the rest of my idols? Here's how you know. If since adding Jesus to your life, you've not once had to make a decision to tell yourself no because of your faith, then all you did was add Jesus to the rest of your idols. If you haven't had to change the way you spend your money, spend your time, how you treat people, how you parent, how you do marriage, how you do anything, if you haven't one time had to self-regulate and go, oh, I'm sorry, I can't smuggle that old part of my life into my new part, then you probably, what you did is you just put Jesus right next to the rest of your idols. And the problem is, as we're going to find out, that doesn't work either. It didn't work when Israel tried it. It's not going to work at all. Isn't it interesting? Both sides of this battle are trying to manipulate a God that cannot be manipulated. Trying to force a God that cannot be forced. It's amazing. Watch what happens next. Verse 3 says this. But when the citizens of Ashdod went to see it the next morning, Dagon had fallen with his face to the ground in front of the ark of the Lord, so they took Dagon and put him in his place again. Let me tell you what happened. They put the ark of God right next to their god Dagon, who happens, according to Tim Keller, to be the god of corn, which only honestly proves that we can make a god out of anything. The god of corn? Really? The god of corn. And when they come into the temple, their idol is face down in a posture of worship before the ark of God. Check this out. Israel tries to force God to show up. Doesn't work. Philistines try to force God to show up. It doesn't work. And all on his own, he brings the God of the nation of Philistia to its face in front of him. Because if you think that you can manipulate God into doing things your way, he wants to prove to you today, I will do it all without you. I do not need you, not one bit. I can bring gods and idols and nations to their knees with no help whatsoever. And if you don't believe him, the Philistines would say, just go ask the Egyptians. Just go ask them how Yahweh brought the most powerful nation in the world to their knees with no help at all. You ever read the story of the Exodus? How God set the Israelites free without an army? Without anyone, with a sword, nothing? Just with what's the picture that's being painted? This is not a God that can be trifled with. This is not a God that you play games with, that you think, oh, I'll do this for you, you'll do this for me. This is not a transactional God. This is a God that does as he pleases, whether it works for you or not. This is why functional faith just doesn't work. It will absolutely not work. He is not a good luck charm. He is not something to be played games with. He brings, actually, we're not going to cover these next couple chapters. We're going to skip ahead to chapter 8 next week. But if you go and read the rest of the chapters between today and next Sunday, what happens is the Philistines keep taking the ark to their different major cities. And as the ark goes to the major cities, not with an army, but just the ark, God takes those cities to their knees, not with a bit of help from Israel. This is not a God that needs you or needs anything from you. You actually have nothing to offer the God of the Bible. This is why functional faith just absolutely does not work. It doesn't make sense because you don't have anything to offer and I don't have anything to offer. He can do it all on his own, and he does whatever he wants. And truth be told, we were talking about blessing last week. We were talking about how if we will live faithfully, then we are opening up an opportunity for God to bless us. Now, here would be the natural question that would arise from that. Okay, well then can I do certain things to get certain things from God? You said if I'm totally committed, if I'm not then doesn't God have to act in a certain way? Absolutely not. That's not that. If you got that from last week's message, that wasn't it. Last week's message was make sure you're not the one standing in the way. That was last week's message. Make sure you're not the one standing in the way. Because the truth of the matter is, you can look around the world and go, this seems to be like a God that does whatever he wants. How many of you have seen God bless someone that you would deem absolutely unworthy of that blessing? And you go, what in the world? You're going to heal that person? You're going to let that person get pregnant? You're going to let that person get married? You're going to promote that person? Are you kidding me, God? I'm way more deserving than them. How could you possibly behave like this, God? He goes, because I will bless whoever I want to bless, and you cannot force me because I am God and you are not. This is not the type of God that we play games with. I know sometimes we go to the New Testament and we go, oh, look at sweet, cuddly Jesus. Same God, not to be played games with. He's not looking for a bargain. You ever do that? Oh, Lord, I swear you get me out of this jam and I'll do anything. He might not. It has nothing to do with whether or not you've got something to offer, because you don't. I don't either. See, we don't need a functional faith. We don't just need a faith that works. What we need is a fixed faith. We need a fixed faith. Look at this definition. I couldn't even have written a better definition than what Google wrote. When something is fixed, it's fastened securely in position, or it's predetermined and not subject or able to be changed. So I don't want to function. I don't want to ask the question, does it work? What I want to ask is it true? Can it hold me whenever life is not doing so good? Can it hold me in the difficult times when I'm crying myself to sleep, when I don't know what my next step is? Do I have a fixed faith that can actually hold me, or do I have a functional faith that's going to fail me? Which one? What is it that I have? Because if you have functional faith, listen, if you're only in it for what you can get out of it, you will leave when you finally get what it is that you're looking for, or you don't get what it is that you're looking for. You'll just leave. You go, I'm sorry, this is too much for me. This is more than I bargained for. It's not going my way. Or thank you, Lord, I got the blessing. Now I'm out of here to do things my own way. You will leave if you finally get it or you don't get it, if you have functional faith. But a fixed faith is solely focused on God and not what this God can do for you. A fixed faith stays faithful even when the relationship is ruined. A fixed faith stays faithful even when He doesn't heal you. A fixed faith stays faithful even when you lose your job. A fixed faith stays faithful no matter what comes their way. People with functional faith, they fall behind, they fall off, they go away. Not people with fixed faith. This is the type of faith that we need. Now, what happens when I truly have fixed faith? How do I know if I have functional faith or fixed faith? What makes the difference? What goes, okay, this is what it looks like to have functional faith. We've kind of looked at that. What does it look like when I am only here because I know that it's true and I don't have any other options? It's kind of like when Jesus said, I'm going away, and the disciples said, or when Jesus had a lot of people leave him. And he looked at the disciples, he goes, are you all going to leave also? And one of them answers back to him, he goes, where else are we going to go? We have nothing else but you. We've all of our secondary options have been taken away because you're the real thing. Where else are we going to go? We have no one else to go to. This is what it looks like. This is what it looks like. Verse 4. Verse 4 says this. But the next morning, the same thing happened. Dagon had fallen face down before the ark of the Lord again, and this time his head and his hands had broken off and were lying in the doorway. Only the trunk of his body was left intact. I don't even need that next verse. I'm going to skip that next verse. So this time they come in. The first day, he's laying prostrate before the ark of God in a posture of worship. The second day, when he comes in, same position, and this time his head and his hands, his arms have been broken off. Now, if you're studying this passage, you go, why? Why the head and why the hands? Well, see, the head, this is the source of knowledge and wisdom. The hands being the source of power. This is how we get stuff done. So wisdom and power. This is what the God of Israel is doing in this moment, is he has laid this false pagan god before him and removed the very sources of wisdom and power from him. Here's the picture that's being painted. That the human heart is capable of turning absolutely anything into an idol, even good things. You have idols in your life that are good things. What are idols? Idols are the things that you derive wisdom and power from. They are the things that you think you need this because it makes you something. You think this way because your ways are higher than anyone else's ways. Your thoughts are higher than everyone else's thoughts. Your idols are those things that you have been clutching a hold of ever since you came in contact with Jesus, and you go, oh, I'm sorry, you can't actually have this part of my life, Lord. my relationship, my finances, my job, my business, the way I spend my time. You can't have this. You can have this over here. You cannot have this. Your idols are those things that whenever I mention them in sermons and your heart starts to race and you get a little angry at me, those are your idols. Those are them because they're what you get power and wisdom from. And we'll do it out of anything. Again, I told you Dagon, according to Tim Keller, was a corn god. A corn god. See, the Philistines, they had in all the pagan nations, had all these different gods that they would try to appease in different ways because, well, if you honor the corn god, then your harvest will be good. And if you honor this God, then he'll do this for you. If you do this, see, all of pagan religion is this transactional type. This is not Christianity. This is not the God of the Bible whatsoever. This is why, and we have come back to a modern paganism, to be honest, when we're asking questions like, well, what works? What works? I'll try this, I'll try this, I'll try anything. What works? We're back to a modern paganism. Trying to answer those questions. Like, if you have fixed faith that is anchored in the one true God, here's what this story is telling us. Then your idols will be destroyed. How do I know if I have fixed faith? If you have fixed faith, your idols will be destroyed. They will literally have their head and their hands completely taken from them. You'll start looking at them, and what you used to think, wow, yeah, that's a good idea. You'll start going, oh, I think I've gotten it wrong. And those things that you used to think, oh, this gives me power, you'll go, oh, no, actually, I see weakness in that. I see the flaws of that. Now I'm seeing things clearly. This is what will happen. Your idols will get utterly destroyed if you have a fixed faith. We could say it a lot simpler like this. What will happen is you will come to understand in fixed faith that God does not exist to serve me. I exist to serve Him. I am not worried about getting anything out of it. He's not a transactional God whatsoever. So your idols will be destroyed. Like, let me just give you some ideas of what these things might be. And again, because it's 2024, I'm going to mention this all the time because we see it constantly. For most Americans, your political ideology is your idol that you will not let God get a hold of. And it's evidenced because on your social media, you talk more about your party than you do the kingdom. You post more articles about what the other side is doing and what that candidate has done and this and that. That's your idol. You wouldn't let Jesus convince you that you were wrong no matter what because it's your idol. And if you have a fixed faith, you'll let Him crush that idol. If you have a functional faith, you'll think that you can just take Jesus and set Him next to your republicanism or your Democrat ideology. You'll think, oh, I'll just take Jesus and set Him here, and then I'll see how Jesus fits into it, rather than, no, how does my political ideology fit into Jesus? That's your idol. And guess what? The whole world sees it on your social media. It's not even a secret. You don't even try to hide your idolatry. You fought with more people this past week on social media about politics and different issues going on in your whatever than you have invited people to church or shared the gospel. It's your idol. It's your idol. And that if you have that idol, you are in functional faith. And let me just tell you, that's not real faith. Some people, it's money. Some people, it's money is their idol. As evidenced by, if you are not giving generously to the kingdom of God, that is a part of your life that you've gone, sorry, God. You can have everything else. I'll do anything other than you can't have this. You just can't have it. That's functional faith. If you think, oh, I'll just sit Jesus next to my other priorities, and like if there's anything left of the month, maybe we'll throw him a tip or something, but no, I'm not going to actually put him first and be generous. He just gets whatever's left over. See, that's because that's your idol. And if this hurts right now, it's especially because it's your idol. Like, have you ever tried to wrestle a stuffed animal away from a 3-year-old? Why do you lose that battle every time? Because that's their security. Right? That's like, no, you can't have Teddy. Can't take that. Why? That's their security. And the reason why God has yet to wrestle away from you your finances or your relationships or your politics or your business or your kids or anything else that we seem to idolize is because that is actually where you are getting your security from. That's what it is. You're clutching it. You go, sorry, you just cannot have this. This is where I get my power and my wisdom from. And I don't mind, Jesus, to set you next to it. I just won't let you get a hold of it. It's functional faith. It just is. See, in fixed faith, idols come down. When I'm convinced that I'm not here for what He can give me, but I'm here for Him, my idols begin to crash. And they are robbed of their power and their wisdom. My faith is no longer transactional. And now, when I have fixed faith, a faith that is fastened securely, then when life is tough and life is difficult, I finally have something that can hold me. I finally have something that can answer the question, not is it working for me, but is it true? And if it's true, it can hold me. It's a faith that can fully encapsulate my life through all of the ups and the downs of life. You've found it when you have a fixed faith. You have something. You have someone that will be with you whether you get what you want in life or not. You have that. It's why fixed faith is the answer. We trust this God over every other God in our life. And that's what idols are. These are things that we've put in the position of God. And we trust the one true God over all those. See, because some of those things are good things, but you've put them in the God section of your life, so you can't properly enjoy them. But when you take the good thing and you put it in the good section and you put God in the God section, then now you can actually enjoy the benefit. Now you can actually enjoy the benefit of whatever that is. If your kids are in the God section, you'll never be able to fully enjoy your kids as they were meant to be enjoyed. Well, they're your priority, and then because you're not putting God, you won't be the parent that God called you to be. But you put God in the right place, then you can enjoy your family. If pleasure and whatever it is your highest thing, you won't ever get everything out of it that it should if it's not in the proper place. Because if you're really striving to be in relationship with God, having those things as the God position in your life will only ever nag you to death, and you'll never fully enjoy them. You'll go, oh man, it feels like this is like way too important in my life, so therefore it needs to take a step back, and if it could take a step back, then you could fully enjoy it. Fixed faith is focused solely on if this God is true, if this God is there no matter what. Now, I know we're going long today, but I got to show this to you because there's something so beautiful in the ark narratives that I want to make sure that you get. So the way this will kind of drive home and go, okay, fixed faith. What is it that my faith is fixed on though? You're saying don't ask if it works, don't try to be transactional. What is it that my faith is fixed on? I'm going to answer that question by taking a look at the Ark of the Covenant that we've talked about for the last 2 weeks. Look at this picture. This is a rendering based on the biblical text of what the Ark of the Covenant probably looked like. Now, if you're astute in looking at what's going on, you've got a gold box here. The pole that you're seeing, this is how they were instructed to carry the ark. But you've got two cherubim. These are like worshipful beings. These are folks that are meant to give glory and honor and worship to God. Two cherubim on each side. But you see, they're kind of turned in onto the side here. And if you'll notice, it actually looks like something is missing, correct? Because if the cherubim are turned in this way, in postures of worship, then shouldn't there be something there in the middle that is gaining that worship? But there's nothing there. Like if you were a pagan religion, what you would have is you would have the idol, the symbol, the image of your God in that middle position there. That's what you would have, and it would be like, oh, okay, it makes sense. Now the angels are worshiping our idol right there in the middle. That's what's happening. But on the Ark of the Covenant, there's nothing there. There's nothing there. However, that seat that they're sitting on, this is what would be called the mercy seat or the throne. It was the place where they believed that God, the God of Israel, ruled from. And yet there's nothing there. This is also the thing, it would be kept in the part of the temple and the tabernacle called the Holy of Holies. This was the place that only Moses and the high priest could go once a year. And when they came into the Holies of Holies, the ark would be there, but before they could meet with God for that one time, they'd have to offer a sacrifice, and they would have to bring the blood of that sacrifice, and they would have to place it in between those two cherubim on the mercy seat, on the throne right there. They would place the blood there, and then God could come and meet with them. See, the reason why the Ark of the Covenant, why it never had an image in the middle to be worshipped, is because there was already an image of God, Israel's God, and His name is Jesus. And there was a better mercy seat than the Ark of the Covenant. It was called the cross. And it's because of the cross, the true throne of Jesus, that no matter whatever it is that you go through in life, you can have a fixed faith because of the cross. You can have a faith that is anchored in the cross, that will hold you when life feels like it's crumbling around you. You won't get that in a functional faith. If you're only here, only seeking Jesus for what you can get out of it, you will not get that level of comfort. You will not get that level of peace. You will not get that level of hope. But if you have a fixed faith in the cross of Jesus and what He has done for you, then those arms that were stretched wide on that mercy seat, on that throne where the blood was spilled, so that you could be in the presence of God forever, those arms that were stretched wide are able to hold you in your difficult moments if you have a fixed faith. When you wonder, I don't know how I'm going to get out of bed, when I don't know how I'm going to take my next step, when I don't know how I'm going to deal with tomorrow's problems or yesterday's problems, I don't know how I'm going to deal with the loss of my job or a bad diagnosis or my relationship that is crumbling. I don't know all the answers. If you have a fixed faith in the cross, you don't have to have the answers, but you will have someone to walk through it with.